Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. So we are back again discussing the halachot of Hakhamim Morocco, and today in particular we have a very interesting topic, which the title of the topic is Keem Li, the topic of Keem Li according to Hakhamim Ma'arav. What does the word Keem Li mean? What does the word Keem Li mean? If I have a disagreement with someone, let's say I say that Aaron over here owes me $10,000, and he says I don't owe you $10,000, and we go to Bet Din, and most opinions say that Aaron is right, that I owe him the money, but one or two opinions say that I don't owe him the money. So we find sources, and we're going to see what the sources are, that I'm able to say Keem Li. What does the word Keem Li mean? I'm able to say, I want to go like Keem Li. I'm standing like the opinions, I hold like the opinions that say that I don't have to give you the money. And I could tell Bedin, even though the majority of the opinions hold like Aaron, that I'm obligated to give him the money, but right now I have the money, I'm the muhzak in the money, status quo, it should stay by me. Keem Li. That's what the topic of Keem Li means, which makes the laws of Chosh and Mishpat ever so complex, because as long as I have some opinions supporting me, I could always say, well, I follow like those opinions, and you can't extract money from me. Now, where do we know that there's a source at all that I'm able to say Keem Li? Where do we know that there's a source that I'm able to say Keem Li? It starts from the Rishonim. There's no Gemara about this, but the Rishonim. There's a Mordechi, brought down in Masechet Ketubot Ot Kuf Nun He, and he brings the following. There was a machloket if a person marries a lady and she brings nidunya, she brings dowry, and then she dies even before he was able, right after the chuppah, even before they were able to at all be properly, intimately married, she dies. Does he have to give back the dowry? So most opinions say he has to give it back. Rashi says no, he's able to keep it. So Omer Rabbeinu Shemuel ben Baruch, de mitfos hatan, if the hatan grabs the dowry by him, hamotzi mechaveru alav raya, you have to bring a proof against him. Why? Because he says Keem Li Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzhaki. I want to go like the Rashi that says that I'm allowed to keep it. That's the first opinion. There's also a Rosh in Tshuvot that also says this in Klal Alev Siman Het, that he was mikabel from Rabbeinu Meir, his Rav Rabbeinu Meir Mirotenberg, that if there's a machloket poskim, we don't take money out from the muhzak, from the person who is holding on to the money, because he's able to say Keem Li. That's the general ruling of Keem Li. Good? Now, Rabotenu, our great poskim, they have much discussion about this. If we say Keem Li or not, there's a shach that has kuntrus. There's shvut Yaakov that has klalim. There's urim vetumim that has the klalim. Everyone has klalim about Keem Li. But the truth is, it's a very difficult concept to understand. How do we know where it stops and the parameters of Keem Li? You're going to tell me that every time I have a machloket with someone, I could say on one lost opinion, I could say Keem Li? How does that work? And on top of that, let's say I have a Rav. Let's say we all are posik like a Rav. Could I say Keem Li against that Rav? Is that being intellectually honest, as we call it? So what's this concept over here? So, and if we understand this concept, we're going to see that this is also going to reveal to us what really the concept behind that Kibalnu Dat Maran, that we accepted the opinion of Maran. How strong does that go? Because the big question is going to be, are we going to be able to say Keem Li like the opinion against the opinion of Maran? Let's say Maran holds one way and the Rama holds the other way. Am I allowed to say, I go like the Rama? Am I allowed to say Keem Li? In Shabbat, Shabbat, you can't do that. You hold like Maran. Too bad. You have to hold like Maran. But in Chosh and Mishpat, are you able to say Keem Li? I follow like the opinion of the Rama. That's going to be the big question. Got it? Okay, so that's going to be the discussion tonight. And I want to I want to start off with like this. There's a Bedek Habayit. The Bedek Habayit was the glosses that was written from the Bet Yosef that he added on later. And the Bedek Habayit discusses the following. He says, in the cities in the country of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, where they accepted upon themselves the Rambam, where they accepted upon themselves the Rambam's opinion, you cannot say Keem Li against the Rambam, because that's where they accepted the Rambam like their Rav. That's what the Bedek Habayit writes. That's what the Bedek Habayit writes in Hoshen Mishpat Siman Chaf Hey. He says that where people accepted themselves like the Rambam, you cannot say Keem Li, and let's say Aaron has the Rambam supporting him to take the $10,000 away from me, he could, even if I'm a muhzak, even if I'm holding the money. Now, what about Maran? Do we follow, let's say we accepted Maran. Did we accept Maran in an absolute form that we can't even say Keem Li against Maran, or not? This is very relevant discussion. Rav Ovadia Yosef in Yabia Omer, Helek Gimel, has a big discussion about this. And he says that there are many poskim that say that you could say Keem Li even against Maran, which is going to be a very big point of it's going to be a very big machloket. We're going to see what the case he's talking about soon, but we'll discuss the case now. In Yabia Omer Chelek Gimel Siman Daled of Hoshen Mishpat, it says like this: there was a couple that got divorced, and they agreed that each one is going to give a certain amount of child support. Each one is going to give a certain amount of child support, but the other side. But the wife said she's going to give a certain amount. Okay, but they didn't discuss exactly how much, and they discussed a certain small amount. But after they got divorced and she even remarried, she refused to pay her portion. So the husband brings to Bedin. What do you mean? She also agreed. It's her kid. She has I have custody, the husband said, but she has to also put in money. So she says, well, you know what? According to, she didn't say it, but I guess the question came up, that according to the Rambam, if you're mitchayev, if you obligate yourself on something that doesn't have any amount, that's not called a real obligation. So Keem Li, like the Rambam, she wants to say like the Rambam, and therefore she wouldn't have to pay. Could she do that? So the question is, can you do Keem Li? Maran HaShulchan Aruch doesn't follow the Rambam. Maran HaShulchan Aruch says that it seems to be that Maran says everybody argued on the Rambam, and Maran HaShulchan Aruch says that you could be mechayev yourself even if it's a non-set amount. So Rav Ovadia has a whole discussion. He brings many poskim that say you could say Keem Li against Maran. Now, what does that mean if you could say Keem Li against Maran? It means that we didn't accept Maran like our absolute Mara De'atra, right? Now, this is a big discussion because Rav Ovadia wrote this in Helek Gimel. In Helek Tet of Yabia Omer, Rav Ovadia doesn't write this way. It seems to be that he retracted and he held that you cannot say Keem Li against Maran. Once Maran said something, we accepted him like the Mara De'atra, like our Rav, and once we accept him like our Rav, you cannot say Keem Li. You can't say, well, I'm going to go like the other opinions against him. Now, the truth is that Rabbi Tzion Bashaul in his Akdama to the Mavo says that there are some who say you can't say Keem Li like Maran because they say he's like a Mara De'atra, and we accepted the opinions of Maran like a Vadai. And he says it can't be that we accepted the opinions of Maran like a Vadai. It can't be that we accepted him like an absolute. Because if that's the case, that we accepted him like a Vadai, like an absolute, how could you say anytime you have a Safek Brachot, every time you have a doubt in a Bracha, Safek Brachot Lakin, even against Maran? What's the Lacha? Let's say your Talit slips off you. Are you allowed to, do you make another Bracha? Maran says you make another Bracha. Nevertheless, the Lacha is we don't. Why don't we make another Bracha? Because we say Keem Li, we say Safek Brachot Lakin against Maran. And a lot of things we say Safek Brachot Lakin against Maran. But if you follow like Maran, he's like your Rav. What do you mean? I'm in doubt. If you're in doubt, he's your Rav. You have to accept him everywhere. Also, we go, a lot of times they're Rizal against Maran. Like we make the bracha noten la'ayef koach. Even though Maran says not to make the bracha b'shem malchut, and that's how they did in Meknes, but most of the world does birkat noten la'ayef koach, because we go like the Arizal. So that's another proof that the acceptance of Maran is not absolute. Now, I always had this question against Rav Ovadia Yosef. I said, if he accepts Maran like Mara De'atra, So how could it be that we follow in brachot against them, and how do we follow the Arizal against them? So I always had this question. I even send him a letter. And I asked his Chavruta, Rav Yisrael Meir Yonah Shlita, to read him this letter and to ask him what this holding like Maran. The story is that as he was reading the letter, he saw that I brought down a Chazonish, that the Chazonish says that in a place of, like nowadays, you can't have Mara de Atra because there's nobody alive anymore. Like you say, Maran is the Mara de Atra. He's not alive anymore. You can't have somebody who's not around, who's your Rav. So Rav got so upset he couldn't continue reading the letter. So I never really got my answer. But I recently saw in a diary of the Chavrut of Rav Ovadia, a very, very good book called Rabbeinu. And over there, actually, he writes that Rav Ovadia told him once that if he had the koach, if he had the power, he would say, you can't even say safek brachot le'akel against Maran. That means you'd follow Maran in everything. You wouldn't make the bracha noten nayef koach. You wouldn't make the, you'd have to make a new bracha on the talit, as we mentioned. Any different halakha that Maran says, we wouldn't say savek brachot le'akel. But he says he can't go against 400 years of acharonim. We didn't follow that. But he was really of that opinion that we hold Maran absolute the strongest we can, Mara de'atra. Rabbi Tzina Bashaul says, no, it can't be that we follow Maran de'atra, because you see, Maran de'atra is only if he's around, not if he's not around. And further, that's that other people ask. But Rabbi Tzina asks, he says, you see that sometimes we're machmir against Maran, some davar sheba erva we're machmir against Maran. The concept of Maran de'atra is only if he's your Rav, if he's around. But you can't say that going on everywhere. And therefore, obviously, you could say Keem Li against Maran. Hakhamim Morocco had a different approach. Because there's another very important halakha that's relevant to the subject of Keem Li. There's a discussion like this. Can you say Keem Li against what's written? Let's say you can't say Keem Li against Maran. Can you say Keem Li against what's written in not only in the Shulchan Aruch and the Bet Yosef? You see, Maran wrote 5 different works. He wrote the Bet Yosef. He wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He wrote the Kesef Mishneh, which is a commentary on the Rambam. He wrote Teshuvot, Avkat Rochel. And he wrote Bedek HaBayit, which is the glosses on the Bet Yosef. Now, did we accept... So, according to Rav Ovadia, and Rav Ovadia has a tshuva about this, he says, if Maran is Mara de'atra, we should follow everything. And therefore, you can't say Keem Li even against what's written in the Bedek HaBayit, even against what's written in the Kesef Mishnah, even in what's written in the Teshuvot. You can't, because we accepted the person. And the person, we accepted Maran. And Maran in everywhere. As a matter of fact, in that book, Rabbeinu, it's written that he got upset. He says, how does Rabbi Shalom Mesaz and Rabbi Yoshua Maman, Rabbi Yoshua Maman is still alive, say that we only accepted Maran in Bet Yosef and Shulchan Aruch, and we could say Keem Li against them? How could that be? What? Maran's Mara de'atra. He used to get upset at Hakhamim Morocco about this. He held that Maran Mara de'atra all the way through. But we're going to see that Hakhamim Morocco weren't of this opinion. Rabbi Yitzhak ben Walid writes in Vayomer Yitzchak in Likutei Dinim of Choshen Mishpat, he writes, there are some who say that you can't say Keem Li against what Maran wrote in his responsa, Teshuvot, but he found the Ya'avetz, which was a great Moroccan Hakhamim, Rav Yaakov ben Sur, that says that you could say Keem Li against what Maran wrote in Teshuvot, but you cannot say Keem Li in what's written in the Bet Yosef and in the Shulchan Aruch. So Hakhamim Morocco were of the opinion that you cannot say Keem Li against Maran, but only, in other words, only in what's written in the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch, but not everything else. So there's 3 opinions. Maran Rav Ovadia holds you can never say Keem Li against Maran. Then Rabbi Tzina Bashaul says you could always say Keem Li against Maran. Rav Ovadia and Chelik Gimel also brought down those opinions. And then Hakhamim Morocco said what's written in the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch, you could not say Keem Li, you can't say Keem Li. And in the other Sfarim, you could say Keem Li. Now, what was the Sfar of Hakhamim Morocco? They held like this. And I spoke about this in Magen Avot Orach Chaim, Shoresh Shlishi, I believe. That when we accepted Maran, it's not a Mara de'atra, because Mara de'atra, as we said, has to be around. That's what Shilot Teshuvot Rashba says. Mara de'atra has to be in present. So what did it mean we accepted Maran? The Rav of Maran was Rabbi Yaakov Be'Rav. And he taught him the klal of 2 against 3. That means if you have 3 poskim, Rif, Rambam, and Rosh, 2 against 3. People think, why did Maran take the Rosh as the third? Because the Rosh was Ashkenazi, so at least you have one Ashkenazi in the mix. It's not true. The Rosh was more the Rav of the Sfaradim than the Rambam. The Rambam we held of a lot. But after the Rosh escaped from Germany and we went to Spain, his psakim were very accepted, to a point that the Don Yitzchak Abarbanel writes, Harosh hu Rabam shel kol Sfaradim. And the Marshach also writes, Harosh hu harav shel Sfaradim. The Rosh was the Rav of the Sfaradim. His psakim were very nitkabel. So that's why the Bet Yosef took the Rosh as one of the top 3, the Rif Rambam and the Rosh, because he was the Rav of the Sfaradim, right? So this ruling, Rav Yaakov Berav came to Morocco and he taught it. So the Hakhamim Morocco accepted this. It's written in the Avnei Shaish. Rav David Ovadia brings us in this sefer that this was the ruling of Hakhamim Morocco, that they held 2 against 3, and they held this ruling of Teremi Gutlat, which was the basis of the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch. So that's why we accepted the Shulchan Aruch. But we only accepted what's written in the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch. Not more than that. We accepted En Lanu Ela Divrei Maran, what's written in the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch, and not what's written afterwards in the Bet HaKabayit or whatever else. And this was the haskama of a lot of poskim. So getting back to our getting back to our discussion. So over here, this lady wanted to say Keem Li. So she could say Keem Li against Maran if it's written in the Teshuvot, but if it's written in the Shulchan Aruch, she can't say Keem Li. That's what would be the nafkamina. So once again, just to recap, if somebody has a case in Choshen Mishpat that there's different opinions, so if he finds an opinion that he could rely on, he could say Keem Li. Now many Batei Dinim are going to say, okay, it has to be a valid opinion. You can't just one opinion out of 100. It has to be a valid opinion. It has to be a couple strong opinions, and each din is going to have its criteria, how strong of a Keem Li you could make. But if you're going to talk about Sfaradim, if they can say Keem Li against Dat Maran, if it's written in the Shulchan Aruch and the Bet Yosef, you can't. If it's written in the Tshuvot, you could say Keem Li. Tshuvot or Bet HaKabayit, you could say Keem Li. Now, one last thing I want to mention is that there's a sefer, Layitzchak Reach, written by one of the Chachmei Fez, called Rav Yitzhak Ibn Denan. And he writes in Choshen Mishpat, Ot Kuf, he writes like this: we don't hold of Keem Li. That's what he says. He says, we don't hold Keem Li. Rather, anything that we're not sure in the Shulchan Aruch, we go after most opinions. And where there's a machloket, we go like the Sma, which was a commentary. And he brings down these opinions that this is Marash Ibn Sur also writes B'Shem Chachmei Rabbanei Marrakesh that if the Shach and the Sma argue, we go after what's the most simple reading in the Shulchan Aruch, and even if the Taz is going that way, that's what we're going to follow. So he basically wiped the whole rule of Keem Li out the window, which is wondrous, because in that same book, you go to the next page, he has Klalim of Keem Li, on and on and on and on again. So, I mean, like, what does he mean to say? So I think that his kavanah over here is like this. When the Dayan has a opinion, then he has to say what he thinks the opinion is. So our minhag was that the Dayan decides this is the halakha. You can't say Keem Li because the Dayan is telling you it's clear to me the halakha is this way. You could still, according to Rav Yitzchak Ibn Denan, you'll still be able to say Keem Li when you're not sure what the halakha is. But if you're sure what the halakha is, and Chachmei Morocco had clear rulings what the halakha was, you wouldn't be able to say Keem Li. That's what Yitzchak Ibn Denan writes. Al Kol Panim, I haven't found most people write those. Most poskim write that you could say Keem Li, and that's why the Choshen Dinim of Choshen Mishpat are so complex and so complicated, because you're never going to have a clear halakha. And most Batei Dinim, that's why they're going to try to make psharot. They're going to make compromises, arbitration of compromises in the middle, because there's always going to be able to say some Keem Lis, unless it's a clear-cut ruling. But if it's not a clear-cut ruling, which a lot of times it isn't, you'll always be able to say Keem Li. So that is the different parameters of Keem Li, especially by the Hakhamim Morocco. Hazaku Baruch.